Hello guys, welcome to the channel, welcome to another horror movie review. Tonight we're looking at a 1980s classic. We're looking at The Funhouse. I always found this misleading because this clown's not even in it. But yeah, The Funhouse. I'll tell you a little bit about the film before we go any further with a synopsis. Right, let's have a little look. What have I written down? Okay, The Funhouse. It's an American film made in 1981. It runs for 1 hour 36 minutes. Certification is a 15. It's directed by Toby Hooper, director of Eaten Alive and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Stars Elizabeth Berridge, Cooper Huckleby, and Kevin Conway. Screenplays by Larry Block. Cinematography is by Andrew Laszlo, and the music is by John Beal. Now, this film, I saw it. I mean, I do own it on DVD, but not recent. I've recently sort of upgraded it to Blu-ray, just because it was cheap. It was about £8. Please excuse me, guys. I've got a really bad cough at the moment, so I will be coughing throughout the video. This film follows a group of teenagers. First of all, we see this young lad at home who's into his horror things, into classic sort of Universal horror, Frankenstein, Dracula. He's got all these posters and action figures in his room, and he goes and plays a trick on his sister. And it's sort of reminiscence sort of Halloween at the beginning, because we see the young lad in his bedroom in first person view, and then he puts on a mask and gets this knife from the wall, and his sister's in the shower, so he walks towards the shower, and then we get a sort of Psycho sort of tribute, if you like, and he goes and she thinks it's somebody stabbing her. And it turns out to be like a plastic bendy knife, and she pulls off the mask and sees it's her brother. So she takes him and gives him a massive telling off. She goes, I will revenge you one day. You'll see, I will revenge you for this. It's a bit over the top. I mean, the kid's only playing a joke, but I think she was in shock. Anyway, and then we see her all dressed up in this revolting blue dress, and she's getting ready to go out on a date. Her dad and her mother sitting there talking to her, and they're not too happy about the date because they said that, think she's too young, that they've not met her, and she goes, Dad, I'm not going to marry him, it's the first date, sort of thing. And they said, where are you going? I hope you're not going to the carnival. And they said, no, we're going to the movies. Anyway, the little lad's listening on the stairs, and he's going, liar, and all this. He's sitting on the stairs listening to the whole conversation. Anyway, her ride arrives. I think his name is Buzz. Got some really cheesy names and these sort of things. And he arrives and he takes her out in the car. And they're sitting there chatting. And she's saying, maybe we shouldn't go to the carnival. Now, carnivals in America, here in the UK, they're called fun fairs. So it's a fair. And she goes, maybe we should just go to the cinema, because one, I just promised my dad and all that. And he goes, no, we're going to go, we've got to pick up our friends. So they drive off in his car. And while he's doing that, the young lad in the house sneaks out the house. He climbs down the side of the house, and he's making his way towards the carnival or fair himself. And then we join our two teens met up with their two mates, and they're all in the car sort of smoking pot, telling the most ridiculous stupid jokes that are not even funny to each other, and they head off towards the fair, and the girl's friend saying, oh, don't be so uptight, and all this sort of thing. And so off they all go to this fair. And the young lad's making his way to the fair, and he passes this fence, and we get a jump scare of like a German Shepherd dog up against the fence, and he's making his way towards the fair himself. He's got his little bit of money savings that he's got in a jar, and he's heading out to this fair. And then we arrive at the fun fair, and we see the car pull up, and they all get out and head their way into the fair, and the sort of camera backs away, and we get to see quite a busy fair. And then we see them sort of enjoying themselves on all these different sort of fun fair rides, roller coasters, bumper cars, and all these sort of wonderful sort of waltzers, and all these sort of wonderful rides and stuff, the big wheel. And the young lad arrives, and he's trying to sneak his way in. And this fair is full of really weird sort of characters, the people that work there. It's very, very sort of Chainsaw Massacre when it comes to like the sort of local sort of fairground characters. They're not too dissimilar from the weirdos from the Chainsaw Massacre. And they got a guy shouting outside about this freak animals and stuff, where they go in and they see like this two-headed cow, and they go in and see these strange sort of animals. They've got a cow with a cleft palate, and supposed to be a sheep with 6 legs, and you see all these weird sort of animals. And then they go into another room where they see this sort of like this deformed sort of baby in like a on display in like a glass tub with like fluid, and they start talking about that and all this sort of thing, and the girls are getting a bit sort of freaked out by it all. And then they go out and they go on their way to do other things, and we see a guy outside shouting about the Funhouse, trying to tempt people in to go to Funhouse, and he's got this sort of other person who's dealing with the sort of bumper cars. Now this Funhouse, again in the UK, would be called a ghost train, and they got this lad dressed as like a Frankenstein dealing with the little trams that people sit on and go around in the ride. Anyway, they go off to somewhere else. They go and see a magician who starts doing these sort of tricks with it, with someone in the coffin and putting in the stake through it, and they're okay and all this sort of thing. And then they go to another tent where it's like a fortune teller. Xena, I think her name is. They go and see her, and so our sort of like main character, she's getting her fortune told. And when they leave the tent, the evening's starting to wind down, and one of the lads has the bright idea that let's stay here the night. Goes, what do you mean? Goes, well, let's stay here tonight. Let's sneak into the Funhouse, the ghost train, and we'll stay in there at night. It's happened, it's done before. Now, there's supposed to be a history behind this carnival fair, where they've gone to a town a couple of years ago, and a couple of children gone missing and got killed at this fair. So the girl's quite reluctant to do this sort of thing. But of course, because she's on a date, she doesn't want to be prudish, so she decides to stay. So they all make phone calls to their parents saying, oh, they're staying around this place, this house, they're staying around that house. So they all think that they're staying together at someone's house. And they all get onto the fun house. They all get onto the rides and they go in. And this is when the film changes. It then changes from this sort of 80s happy semi-comedy sort of teen flick into this sort of survival horror film. Because whilst they're in there at night, they hear noises coming down below, and they look through the gaps in the wood sort of planks, and they see the Frankenstein guy in there, and he's there with the fortune teller Xena. She's in there, and he's paying her for her affections, and we see a little bit of her giving him some hand affections, if you like, and it doesn't last very long, and he's paid $100, so he's not very happy. He doesn't think he's got his money worth. Anyway, so they start fighting, and then the Frankenstein monster sort of lad strangles this fortune teller and kills her. And he doesn't talk, he just grunts. And then he goes to get his dad, who's the guy that's been outside shouting out, come into the funhouse, the guy like that. So he comes in and shows him that he's killed her. Anyway, so he comes up with a plan, the dad, to move the body out and dump it somewhere and say it was locals that did it. But all the kids are witnessing this through the floorboards as they're in the actual funhouse. And one of the lads drops his lighter, which falls through the gap onto the floor of where they are in the basement. And then so they know that someone was in there. And then that's when it all turns again. And the guy dressed as Frankenstein takes off his mask, and he's actually a deformed lad, and he looks more like a monster, to be honest. It's very strange looking, and he's sort of like this sort of freak, if you like, and he then starts going down and hunting down the kids one by one. And that's all the synopsis I'm going to tell you. What do I think of the film? I think it's a great fun film. It was great to sit down and put on an 80s classic horror, because I've not done that for a while. I've been watching lots of horrors, but I've been watching a lot of sort of more up to date sort of horrors and things like that, or some really older sort of horrors like 50s and 60s. So it was good to get back to the 80s classic semi sort of slasher survival kind of horror film, and it was great. It's very, very reminiscent to Toby Hooper's other films. You got the weird characters like Eaten Alive and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and they're all so similar to that, and you see elements of both in that, and it is very, very Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but in a fun fair, if you like. And our lad, the Frankenstein lad, is like the Leatherface of the film. So the characters are not too different, and it's a sort of fight for survival, just like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's not as disturbing as Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Again, there's very, very little gore. In fact, I don't think there was any gore in it, if I can remember right. So there's very little gore in the film. And it's a typical 80s sort of film, and it's shot really, really well. The cinematography is absolutely fantastic. The characters are kind of like, well, it's difficult to like them because they're all sort of like, the sort of teenage sort of I didn't really care about them, if you know what I mean. I didn't care if anything happened to them. But that's what you want in these sort of films, because you don't want to care about them, because then you get sort of like emotionally drawn into it. But when you're watching sort of like a popcorn horror film, which I would describe this as, you don't want that. You want to sort of like just enjoy it, and hopefully see some deaths and some weird and wonderful characters, which there is in abundance. There's all sorts of characters just wandering around. There's like an old lady saying God is watching you throughout the film, and there's another guy who looks like a sort of zombie just sort of walking around. There's an old man peeing behind a tent that they catch. There's all these bizarre characters, and you've got the characters that work at the fair, and they're all really strange. I'm going to score this film a great watch because it's fun, and give it an 8 out of 10. There's nothing serious about it. It's not a serious horror film, so it's not a 9 or a 10 out of 10 film. It's just a fun sort of horror film, which you can just pop on with your mates and have some popcorn, some beer, and have a good laugh at it, because that's all you can really do. But you can't take it any serious. It's almost like Tobe Hooper's sort of homage to the sort of like 80s slasher, and maybe cashing in on the popularity of that at the time, because he made Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which was quite disturbing. Again, not gory, but it was disturbing. Whereas Eaten Alive was probably a little bit more gorier and a little bit more outlandish as well. With still strange characters. They all have the common feel of the strangeness and weirdness of the characters, but that's what makes his films kind of unique, because you expect that, and when you go in to watch them, I suppose the only one that wasn't really strange was Poltergeist. When he made Poltergeist, and it was nowhere near as strange as these. That was a bit more mainstream, But this has got that sort of wacky feel to it, and that's why I really enjoyed it. The Funhouse, 8 out of 10. Any of you guys seen it? If you have, let me know down below what you think of it. It's a really cool film. I know my lad's picked it up and he really enjoyed it too. It was a good sort of sit down slasher, not be serious sort of film. You know, films like Trapped Alive, The Chill Factor, all these sort of 80s sort of film, Pledge Night, all these kind of films that you can't take seriously, but they're good fun to watch. And that's all this is. And I liked it for that. Guys, till my next review, please check out some other horror channels. Check out Horror Hands, the Horror Geek, Man v Film, RS Designs, Pizzlewell, I'm Ice Lord, Cat Watches Horror Movies, and Grumpy Andrew's Haunted House. And a massive shout out to the lad. Hope you're doing well, mate. Till next time, look after yourselves, look after one another, and I really hope I'll see you all soon.